I wanted to just chat with you a little bit about Psalm 91, especially a portion earlier on in the psalm that talks about the terror by night and the arrows that fly by day. I have done a little bit of digging on that, and what I found is kind of interesting. I'll just read the verses to you. This is in the NIV. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Surely He will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. Verse 5, you will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. Psalm 91, along with a handful of others, is known as a deliverance psalm, and it was used back in Hebrew times as a fight against demonic forces in people. And the words, the arrow that flies by day, kind of jumped at me, and I started to think about what those arrows would be. Obviously, the terror by night is some kind of demonic harassment at night, whether it be nightmares, demonic forces visiting you in your dreams, or whether in reality, stalking your room or harassing you physically or spiritually. In Rashi's comment on Psalm 91, he mentioned something which jumped out at me. It said that this is the demon that flies like an arrow. In verse 6, it also talks about pestilence and destruction, which are the names of demons. One destroys at night and one destroys at noon. In verse 7, it says, 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. The commentary on this was 1,000 demons stationed at your left and 10,000 at your right side. That's quite a few demons. But they won't touch you. So this is a good psalm. If you are the kind of person that has had some kind of demonic harassment, especially at night, if you get night terrors, or have found yourself waking up panicky or frozen so that you don't feel like you can move your body, then this is a great psalm to get to know well, to absorb it into you, to wear it like a garment, and know it so that you can quote it. When you get woken up in the middle of the night with panic or fear, pull out this psalm and begin to quote it. Job 5 verse 7 says, yet man is born to trouble as sparks fly upward. Rashi's commentary on this is that demons fought against them and flying creatures fly upwards. And he reckons that these are demons. And then the verse, I've been considering Hebrews 12, and the first verse in Hebrews 12, and I'm just going to turn to it so that I can read it out to you. Hebrews 12, and this is in the NIV. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith, our faith. In verse 1, the ESV says that we should lay aside every weight and sin that clings to us. In the NIV it says that we should throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. Little Scott Jones' definition of the word used for weight comes up with an arrowhead embedded, or a protuberance, the barb of an arrow. So I began to think, is there a link there between Psalm 91 and the arrows that fly by day, And they can be physical arrows, obviously, but there is a sense that this is also a spiritual thing, and possibly a demonic thing. So here is mentioned arrowheads embedded, or the barb of an arrow in Hebrews 12, and that we're meant to lay off these things, throw them off, anything that hinders us. In Psalm 11 verse 2, the wicked bend their bows, they set their arrows against the strings to shoot from the shadows at the upright in heart. So we can see with that war motif that we have arrows being shot from the shadows, and they are aiming for the upright in heart. Jeremiah 9 verse 7 gives us some more detail on what these arrows could be. Their tongue is a deadly arrow, it speaks deceit. Each one speaks peaceably with his mouth to his neighbour, but in his heart he lays a trap for him. So here we have the tongue being seen as a deadly arrow, and that changes a little bit the Psalm 91 interpretation for me. I'm thinking the arrows that fly by day. So these are potentially, and it can have other interpretations, either demons that fly, so flying demons that fly like arrows, or they could be demonically inspired words, curses, word curses, things that can attach themselves to us, dig under the skin and sit and fester in us, words that are said against us, and often they have been said from the shadows. So possibly these are things said behind your back, and those arrowheads have gone and embedded themselves into you, in your back and in your sides, any chinks in the armour. And then we come forward to that armour of God, the very famous passage in Ephesians 6. In verse 16 it says, "Take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one." So here we see that the arrows are not only from the evil one, from an evil source, but they're flaming as well. And faith in this situation is the fire extinguisher. Job 6 verse 4 suggests that God can also send arrows. So there are arrows from the good side as well as the demonic side. Job 6 verse 4 speaks about the arrows of the Almighty are within me. Psalm 38 verse 2, "For your arrows stick fast in me, and your hand presses me." The word for arrow isn't found in the New Testament, but it's used a lot in the Old Testament. The arrows of God are lightnings which cleave the atmosphere. In Psalm 54, "Whose teeth are spears and arrows." Psalm 120, "What shall be done to you, you false tongue, sharp arrows of the mighty with coals of juniper?" Once a word is spoken, it flies like an arrow. And it's just a reminder to me, of my own tongue, and that words can speak life and it can speak death. And again, to remind ourselves that we do not want to be a word curse for other people. We do not want to say things that spread death rather than life. And conversely, if people have said things to you that have spread death or festered in you, that we're reminded that we should cast these things off, that we should dig those arrowheads out. And so that is the end of my thoughts for that particular verse. Back there in Psalm 91, the arrows by day. So word curses and things to look out for, to throw off, and ask God through the Holy Spirit to bring those things out from underneath the skin, to cut those things off and bring healing to those spaces through faith in Him. Thanks for listening.